Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are stepping right into, what has to be one of the most critical moments in the history of Western thought.
Absolutely. The lead up to the trial of Socrates.
Exactly. We're diving into Plato's Euthyphro, and this short dialogue, it just sets up one of the most persistent ethical and theological questions ever asked. What is goodness? Or, in this very specific context, what is piety?
It's just essential reading. It's the perfect prelude, both dramatically and philosophically, to the end of Socrates' life. You know, what we see later in the Apology, the Credo, the Phaedo.
He really is.
The whole dialogue is basically a race against time for Socrates. He's trying to find the wisdom he thinks he needs to defend himself against this charge of impiety.
Right. So our source today is the dialogue itself, which is just this incredibly rigorous foundation for the whole problem. And our mission here is to really break it down piece by piece.
The systematic breakdown.
Yes, to pull out the logical chains, define the terms, which can be so tricky, and make sure that by the end of this, you really get why the failure to define piety here is actually a huge success for philosophy.
Oh, it's a monumental success.
Right.
It's the moment the Socratic method just runs headfirst into religious common sense and, well, that common sense just completely crumbles.
Okay, let's set the scene, because the context here is just, it's everything.
It is.
So we have Socrates and this man, Euthyphro, meeting near the court of the king Archon in Athens. Socrates is there because he's been indicted.
Right, by a younger man named Miletus.
And the charges, they're not just some minor legal issue. For the Athenian state, they're existential.
They're politically explosive. I mean,
Yeah.
Miletus is accusing Socrates of corrupting the youth of Athens and, crucially, of not believing in the city's gods.
He says he's inventing new ones.
Exactly, introducing new divinities. And you have to understand, this is a capital offense. It's a charge of aesebia, ungodliness. It was seen as a threat to the entire religious and civic order of Athens.
So Socrates is there as the defendant, but Euthyphro, he's there as the prosecutor. And his case is, frankly, it's shocking.
It's scandalous, even for the Athenians, who, valued family loyalty above almost everything. Euthyphro is there to prosecute his own father.
His own father.
For murder. And the situation is, it's messy. The victim wasn't a free citizen. He was a dependent worker who had himself killed a slave in a drunken rage.
So Euthyphro's father found out, tied the worker up, and threw him in a ditch while he sent for a priest to ask what to do.
Right, but the man died of exposure and cold before the messenger even got back. So it's not really premeditated murder. It's a gross negligence.
And most people in Athens would see prosecuting your own father for that as the ultimate act of impiety. It's a violation of the most sacred family bonds.
Absolutely. His whole family thinks he's acting impiously. But Euthyphro sees himself as an expert, a religious authority. He's a priest, a diviner, and he claims to know the will of the gods so perfectly that he has no fear about putting his own father on trial.
And for Socrates, this is like hitting the intellectual jackpot.
Oh, absolutely.
He's being accused of impiety, and here's a man who claims to be the world's leading expert on piety. So Socrates just, he feigns ignorance and begs Euthyphro to teach him.
Yes, he says, if you can just teach me what piety is, I can use that very definition to defend myself against Miletus.
And that sets up the whole dialogue, the central question, what is piety? But Socrates isn't looking for examples like prosecuting my father is pious.
No. He wants the universal definition, the essence, the one thing that makes all pious actions pious.
That sets up everything. So let's shift to that high-level view. Let's give everyone the roadmap for the logic we're about to follow.
Okay, so if you had to boil the entire argument of the dialogue down to a single sentence, the executive thesis would be something like this. The dialogue shows the complete failure of defining piety or hosion as just what is loved by the gods. It shows that being God-loved is just a quality or an affect, something that happens to the pious thing. It's not the thing's defining essence, not what it actually is.
That's the destination.
Yeah.
But why was that distinction so important back then? What was the bigger problem Socrates was trying to solve with this idea of essence versus effect?
Well, the context is absolutely key. Athenian religion wasn't like a modern organized church. It was tied to rituals, local traditions, and maybe most importantly to this chaotic, contradictory mythology of the Greek gods.
You mean Zeus fighting Cronus, Hera angry at Zeus?
Exactly. All of it.
Yeah.
The gods were constantly disagreeing, fighting, scheming. So if your morality of what's right or wrong, just or unjust, is based only on what these bickering gods happen to love at any given moment,
then your morality is completely unstable. It's arbitrary.
it becomes arbitrary and relative. The philosophical challenge that Socrates is kicking off here is this push towards universal, objective definitions for ethical terms. If piety can change depending on which god you ask, how can a city have any kind of stable moral order?
So he wants a standard that's above the gods, in a way.
Precisely. An unchanging standard, what Plato will later call a form, that doesn't depend on the whims of these very flawed, very human-like deities. An objective truth that even the gods have to answer to.
That just raises the stakes completely. He's not just asking for a definition, he's questioning the entire moral foundation of Athens.
He is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get into the logic of why the definitions fail, we have to get the language right. The specific terms they're using are everything here.
Absolutely. Socrates' whole method depends on getting crystal clear on the terminology first. You can't even start the argument otherwise.
So let's start with the big one, piety. What does Hosian actually mean here?
Right, so piety or Hosian. In its most basic sense, it refers to knowing and performing the proper rituals, prayer and sacrifice. Euthyphro even defines it that way later on.
But he's not just talking about rituals here.
Not at all. He's using it in a much, much wider sense. It's more like general righteous conduct, justice, but specifically in your relationship with the divine. He's applying it to this huge moral problem with his father, not just a question of which prayer to say.
Got it. And its opposite, then, is impious.
The exact opposite. Socrates defines it as simply lacking that single common characteristic, that form, that all pious actions share. If piety is the essence, impiety is the complete lack of it. It's what makes an act offensive to the gods in the city.
Okay, which brings us to the real goal of the whole conversation, this idea of a form. It's not just a definition, is it?
No, it's so much more. The form, or eidos, is the single, universal, unchanging characteristic that is present in every single pious action and makes it pious. It's the model, the standard you use to judge whether any specific act is pious or not. Socrates wants the very nature of piety itself.
And it's important to put this in historical context, right? The idea of the form develops over time in Plato's writing.
That's a great point. Here, in this early dialogue, the form is probably thought of as immanent, meaning it exists inside the pious acts themselves.
Not in some separate heavenly realm.
Exactly. That transcendent idea comes later in dialogues like the Republic.
Yeah.
But even here, as an immanent quality, it's still universal and it's still unchanging. That's the key.
Which leads us right to the term Euthyphro uses for his first big definition.
God loved, the krion phainon. This is the quality or the affect that a thing gets as a result of being loved by the gods. It's a passive state. Something is being done to the object. It's not about its inherent nature.
Okay, so if I love chocolate, the chocolate now has the quality of being host-loved.
Yes.
But that quality doesn't tell you anything about what chocolate actually is. Its chemical makeup, its taste, its essence.
That is the perfect analogy. The love is the action. God loved is the result of that action, the affection, the quality, and that distinction. That is the key that unlocks this entire dialogue.
And just one last term for context. Dime?
Right, a deme is just a village or territory in Attica. It's like a borough or a district. It's important because Miletus, the accuser, is identified by his deme. It just helps anchor this whole drama in the real civic structure of Athens at the time.
Excellent. Okay, with those terms locked in, especially that crucial difference between a form or essence and an affect or quality, we can finally get into the logical breakdown. It's devastating.
So let's start with Euthyphro's first real attempt. He says piety is simply what is dear to the gods, what the gods love.
Which sounds pretty reasonable. I imagine most Athenians would have nodded along with that.
They probably would have. But Socrates immediately brings up the problem of divine discord. And, given all the Greek myths, this is an easy target.
Yeah, that's a softball.
It is, but it's a necessary first step.
Yeah.
He has to clear away the mythological mess before he can get to the deeper philosophical problem. So this is argument chain 1, the problem of divine discord.
So what's premise 1?
P1 is simple. The gods, according to all the stories everyone believes, are constantly at odds with each other. They disagree, they fight, they have feuds.
Undebatable in Athens. That's just part of their culture.
Totally. Which leads to P2. What do they disagree about? Socrates points out that the things that cause real hostility for both gods and men are always these ethical or aesthetic questions.
Not numbers.
Not numbers. If they disagreed on how many sheep were in a field, they could just count them. The disputes that lead to war are about the just and the unjust, the beautiful and the ugly, the good and the bad. There's no easy way to measure those.
So if the gods are fighting, it must be about these kinds of value judgments.
Exactly. And that brings us to P3, It follows that different gods must consider different things to be just or beautiful or good. They love some things and hate their opposites. And Socrates uses Euthyphro's own case as the perfect example.
Right. Zeus might approve of punishing an unjust father, but Cronus or Hera would be outraged by the disrespect shown to a parent.
Precisely. So P4. The very same action like Euthyphro prosecuting his father ends up being loved by some gods and hated by others. It is both God-loved and God-hated at the very same time.
And there's the contradiction. If piety is just what is loved by the gods.
Then the conclusion, C1, is unavoidable. The same action would be both pious and impious simultaneously. Which is a logical contradiction. The definition is unstable, it's useless as a standard, so it fails.
That first refutation is just, it's so clean. But it forces Euthyphro to try and save his definition. He sees that the problem is the disagreement.
Right.
So he makes a correction. Piety is what all the gods love, unanimously.
And that's a smart move, strategically. It gets rid of the whole mythological chaos. It posits this perfect divine consensus. If every god loves it, it has to be pious, right?
But that's when Socrates moves from the mythological argument to the purely philosophical one.
Yes. This is where he springs the trap. The dilemma that is still debated in theology today.
This is the Euthyphro dilemma proper, distinguishing the essence from the affect. Let's walk through the second argument chain.
Okay, argument chain 2. The Euthyphro dilemma. Socrates starts by establishing a general rule about actions and their effects. So P1. In any case of an action, like carrying something or seeing something or loving something, the object that is affected is in that state because the action is being done to it.
Hold on, let's unpack that premise. It's a little dense. He's making a point about cause and effect.
He is.
So a thing is being carried not because it has some internal quality of carriedness, but because someone is actively carrying it right now.
That's exactly. The action comes first. The state of being affected depends on the action. The action causes the state. A thing is loved because the action of loving is happening.
Okay, got it. So now apply that to the definition.
Right. P2. The god loved is, by definition, a thing that is loved by the gods. So based on the logic we just established in P1, it must be something that is affected by the action of being loved.
It's the result, not the cause.
Exactly. Which leads directly to P3. Therefore, the god loved is God loved because it is being loved by the gods. Its entire status as God loved is dependent on that divine action. It's an effect.
Okay, now for the pivot. Where does piety itself fit into this?
That's P4, and it's the heart of the dilemma. Piety, on the other hand, is something that everyone agrees has some kind of inherent characteristic and independent form that causes the gods to love it in the first place. It is loved because it is pious.
Its nature comes before the loving.
Yes, the piety is what inspires the love. It's not created by the love. And if that's true, then the conclusion, C2, is that the God-loved and the pious are two different things.
One is the cause, the other is the effect.
Precisely. The God-loved is an affect that results from being loved, while the pious is the essence that causes the love. They can't be the same thing. And so the definition fails, because Euthyphro has mistaken an external quality for the internal essential nature of piety.
That is the moment. It's the point in the text where everyone has to pause and reread it 3 times. We have to slow way down here and make sure everyone listening really gets this. Because, this question shapes the next 2,000 years of philosophy and theology.
We have to. The whole thing is captured in that one brilliant question Socrates asks.
Let's quote it again. He says, consider this. Is the pious being loved by the gods because it is pious? Or is it pious because it is being loved by the gods?
That question isn't just a clever bit of wordplay. It forces Euthyphro, and it forces you, the listener, to choose between 2 totally different foundations for morality. Let's call them option A and option B.
Okay, let's do that. Option A. The pious is loved by the gods because it is pious. What does that choice imply?
It implies that piety, goodness, justice, truth, it all exists independently of the gods. It's an objective reality. It's the form we were talking about. It's a standard that exists on its own, and the gods, being wise, recognize its inherent goodness, and they respond to it with their love.
So their love is a recognition of a pre-existing moral truth.
A recognition, exactly. And the consequence of that is huge. It means the gods themselves are subject to a moral law. There's a standard of goodness that is higher than their own will.
So even the gods can't just decide that murder is good.
No, the moral law comes first. If the gods decided to start loving injustice, that wouldn't make injustice good. Injustice would still be unjust. This is the path to moral objectivism, which is what Socrates was fighting for.
Okay, now for the other side, option B, which is what Euthyphro's definition of the God loved really commits him to. It's pious because it is being loved.
This is what we now call divine command theory. It means goodness is created entirely by the divine will. There is no independent standard, and action becomes good for no other reason than that the gods say it's good. Their love is the creator of moral truth.
And the consequence of that is, well, it's pretty scary from a Socratic point of view.
It leads straight to moral arbitrariness. Because if an act is pious only because the gods love it, then if they changed their minds tomorrow and decided to love cruelty and torture, then cruelty and torture would, by definition, become pious.
There's no standard you can use to judge the god's own commands. The word good becomes meaningless. It just means what the gods currently want.
Exactly. So when Euthyphro is forced to agree with option A, that piety is loved because it's already pious, he's accidentally admitted that piety is an objective thing that exists on its own.
But his definition, the God loved, only described the effect, the result of that thing being loved.
He defined the shadow, not the object cast in it. And that's why the definition completely fails. So let's go back to that analogy Socrates uses with seeing.
Right. The action of seeing causes a thing to become a seen thing.
Right. A dog's inherent dogness is the reason it's visible in the first place. That's its essence. A dog is a dog, whether you're looking at it or not.
But it only becomes a seen thing when someone is actively performing the action of seeing it. Seen thing is the passive result, the affect.
Yes. Euthyphro's mistake was defining piety as the God loved. He defined the seen thing, the passive effect. But Socrates shows that piety has to be the reason for the love. It's the dogness that causes the gods to look at it favorably. If piety and God loved were the same, you could swap them. But you can't. One is the cause, the other's the effect.
The failure is total. Euthyphro didn't give him the form, he just gave him a quality that sometimes attaches to the form. The whole discussion has to reset.
It does. And Socrates pushes Euthyphro to try again. But now he changes his strategy. He failed to define piety as its own thing, so now he tries to define it as part of something bigger, something less controversial. Justice.
This is his second big attempt, right? Classifying it.
Exactly. And it's an important move. Socrates asks, is all that is pious also just? But is all that is just also pious? He wants to map out the relationship between them.
And he uses those great little analogies to explain the logic of a smaller class within a larger one.
He does. He talks about fear and shame. All shame involves fear, but you can have fear without shame. You might fear poverty, but you're not necessarily ashamed of it.
Or odd in number.
Right. All odd things are numbers, but not all numbers are odd.
Yeah.
The smaller class, piety, shame, oddness, is inside the larger class, justice, fear, number.
So Euthyphro agrees. Piety is a part of justice, and he defines it as the part of justice that's concerned with the care of the gods. The rest of justice is about the care of men.
And that sounds pretty good, right? It
Right.
feels much more structured. It separates our duties to the divine from our duties to each other.
It does. But Socrates, of course, immediately zeroes in on the most ambiguous word in that definition, care.
What does it mean to care for the gods?
And he just rattles off all these concrete examples of care where the purpose is obvious, to benefit the thing being cared for.
Exactly. He lists them out. The care of horses, which is horse breeding, makes the horses better. The care of dogs makes them better hunters. Service to a doctor aims to produce health. Service to a shipbuilder aims to produce a ship.
So the unspoken question is, if piety is the care of the gods, then it must somehow benefit the gods, makes them better or stronger or happier.
And that's where Euthyphro hits a brick wall. He is horrified by that idea. He says, by Zeus, no. He sees it as completely blasphemous. How can a mere mortal improve an all-powerful, perfect being? You can't.
But then the logic breaks down again. If piety is a type of care that doesn't benefit or improve its object, then what on earth kind of care is it? The word has lost its meaning.
So Euthyphro has to redefine care again. This is his third attempt. He says, okay, it's not beneficial care. It's more like the service that slaves provide to their masters.
A different kind of care.
A very specific kind. And he connects this idea of service to the actual rituals he knows best, the knowledge of how to sacrifice and pray.
So he's falling back on his professional expertise. Piety is just knowing the correct religious procedures. It's a technical skill.
It is.
Yeah.
And Socrates pushes him, what's the goal of this technical skill? What's the end product? And Euthyphro says this service is basically a trading skill, an exchange between gods and men.
The divine marketplace.
You got it. Men beg from the gods. They ask for health, victory, a good harvest. And in return, Men give to the gods honor, reverence, and pleasure.
And that's where Socrates closes the loop. It's brilliant. He shows how the argument is completely circular.
He asks, okay, so we give the gods honor and reverence and pleasure. Why? What's the point of those particular gifts?
And Euthyphro has to admit the only point is to please them.
It's the only rational purpose he can come up with.
Yeah.
And if piety is defined as what pleases the gods,
We're right back where we started.
we are right back at square one. What pleases the gods is just another way of saying what is dear to the gods or the god loved. The very first definition that they already proved was a failure because it confused equality with an essence.
It's just a stunning piece of intellectual demolition. After all that, 3 different attempts, Euthyphro has literally talked himself in a complete circle.
And this is where Socrates drops in that little bit of famous Socratic irony. Euthyphro's getting so frustrated because his arguments just won't stay put.
The Daedalus jest.
Yes. Daedalus was this mythical inventor who supposedly made statues that were so lifelike they would run away if you didn't tie them down.
Right.
So Socrates says, your arguments are like Daedalus' statues. They keep moving around and won't stand still. In fact, you're even cleverer than Daedalus because he could only make his own statues move. You're making my arguments move too.
It's a joke, but it has a very serious point.
It absolutely does. It highlights the central failure. Euthyphro can't provide a stable, objective definition that can be pinned down. His arguments are circular. They're inconsistent. They lack the logical foundation of real knowledge. Socrates is basically saying, I'm trying to hold on to what you're telling me, but it keeps slipping away.
And that leads us to the end of the dialogue, the deadlock, the aporia.
Yes. The conversation doesn't end with some grand conclusion. It ends with Euthyphro just running away. He says, some other time, Socrates, I'm in a hurry. I have to go now.
He literally flees. And you have to think about what a dramatic failure that is for Socrates. He genuinely seemed to believe this expert could give him the form of piety, the very thing he needed to defend his life.
That's where the drama and the philosophy just merge perfectly. The dialogue proves Socrates' own claim of ignorance.
Oh.
He needed this knowledge, and the one man who was so certain he possessed it, certain enough to prosecute his own father, he couldn't last 10 minutes under questioning. Euthyphro's failure is the ultimate justification for Socrates' entire life's mission.
And for Socrates, the consequence is just devastating. He's now left to face his accusers without that objective definition he was searching for. He has to face those charges, corrupting the young, not believing in the city's gods, all on his own.
He does. And the whole dialogue just perfectly illustrates the fundamental conflict here. It's the Socratic search for objective, universal moral truth clashing with the official Athenian religion, which was really just about maintaining traditions and rituals, whether they made logical sense or not.
Socrates wanted a standard to judge the gods themselves. Athens just wanted him to follow the rules.
Yes. And that brings us to the bigger picture here, and maybe a final thought to leave people with. The sources always mention that Socrates' power came not just from his ideas, but from his personality, this incredible self-confident moral authority that he had.
Right, and now think about Euthyphro's final failed definition. Piety is a kind of service or honor you give to the gods. It's a trading skill, it's transactional.
A system based on pleasing the gods to get benefits.
Exactly. So my question is this. If the Athenian idea of religion was so transactional, so based on pleasing these capricious gods, what does it say about their society that a mortal man like Socrates, who demanded objective truth, who questioned the moral character of the gods, who lived by this unwavering rational standard, was seen as the greater threat to their city?
That's the question, isn't it? What was so dangerous about him?
If the gods just wanted gifts and praise, what was so threatening about Socrates' devotion to abstract truth? It seems like he wasn't a threat to the gods at all. He was a threat to the authority of the men who claimed to know the gods well. And that's the conflict that led to his death.
A philosophical threat can be far more dangerous than a political one. And the failure to define piety in the Euthyphro isn't Socrates' failure. It's a brilliant demonstration that the prevailing religious ideas of his time just couldn't stand up to rational thought.
And that question, the nature of goodness, independent of anyone's will, is why this text is still so foundational. Thank you for walking us through this. This was an incredible deep dive.
My pleasure. It's a text you just have to grapple with if you want to understand the birth of Western ethics.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.